Marconi, will you please read the title of the first bill before us today?
Bill number 180003, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Girard Avenue, 5th Street, Spring Garden Street, 8th Street, Brown Street, and 9th Street, all under certain terms and conditions.
Good morning, Mr. Gregorski.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, Division Director of the Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on Bill number 180003, which was introduced in the City Council on January 25th of this year by Councilmember Greenlee for Council President Clark. Bill number 180003 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Girard Avenue, 5th Street, Spring Garden Street, 8th Street, Brown Street, and 9th Street. The bill comprehensively rezones East Poplar neighborhood and follows similar bills that rezoned West Poplar and Northern Liberties. The bill accomplishes the following: it zones single-family homes accordingly, zones open space accordingly, encourages dense mixed-use development on Spring Garden Street, zones for flexibility on Marshall Street, and removes medium industrial zoning from the neighborhood. Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 180003 at its meeting of February 20th of this year and recommended it for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Any, and then we have an amendment on this one, right?
Yeah, there's a minor map amendments.
Change the map a little bit. Okay, all right. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? Seeing none, anyone else here to testify on Bill number 180003? Seeing none, I'm sorry. Ms. Marconi, our next bill, please.
Bill number 180099, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Master Street, 28th Street, Thompson Street, and 27th Street.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski with the Planning Commission. Bill number 18099 amends the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Master Street, 28th Street, Thompson Street, and 27th Street. This change is intended to prevent the introduction of additional multifamily residential buildings onto the 1300 block of Marston Street. In November 2014, the Commission recommended approval of Bill numbers 140798 and 140799. These bills changed the zoning in Brewerytown from primarily RM1, residential multifamily, to RSA5, residential single-family attached, except for Cecil B. Moore Avenue, block surrounding Athletic Recreation Center, the 1300 block of Marston Street, which is the subject of this bill, and blocks between Thompson Street, Girard, 25th, and 28th Street. These blocks were proposed to remain multifamily to cover additional construction costs associated with demolition and remediation on formerly industrial blocks by spreading those costs over a larger number of dwelling units. In April 2016, the Commission recommended against the approval of Bill number 160246, which changed the zoning of blocks between Thompson Street, Girard Avenue, 25th, and 28th Streets from RM1 to RSA5, thus remaining consistent with the original proposal. The City Planning Commission at its meeting of March 20th, 2018, did not recommend Bill number 180099 for approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right, thanks, Mr. Gregorski. Just one question. I see what you're, and again, this isn't to beat up the messenger here, but you know where I'm going to go with this.
I do.
This bill was, the original bill was passed in 2014, correct?
Correct.
And I think often, and I'm familiar with this area because it's just north of where I live, things change a little bit. And I think what people, and I know the people in Brewerytown have been concerned about density, parking issues, particularly parking issues, which they haven't experienced before. So I think the idea, in fact, I'm sure the idea of this is to lessen the density. So, and as I always say, the Planning Commission numerous times comes back with proposed changes because they see that some things that they proposed years ago do not pertain now. So I think that's what we're doing here. Okay?
I understand.
Just for the record. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions for everybody on this bill? Seeing none. Anyone else here to testify on Bill 180099? Seeing none. Mr. Gregorski, could I bring you back just a second? I'm sorry. I didn't pick this up at the time. The map that you proposed on the first, that's proposed on the first bill.
Correct.
It was pointed out that the map doesn't go all the way to Spring Garden Street, but the bill talks about Spring Garden, going to Spring Garden Street.
Right. There's the way we draft maps is we have to have an area that closes. It's a big polygon that closes. Oftentimes, the short title of the bill will include a larger area that is not being rezoned just to make sure that the boundaries are easy and they close. They often don't have the map changes.
Okay, thank you. And again, no one else here to testify on bill number 180099. Seeing none, Ms. Marconi, our next bill, please.
Bill number 180169, an ordinance amending Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Zoning and Planning by revising Chapter 14-700 entitled Development Standards by creating regulations for semi-detached structures and making related changes all under certain terms and conditions.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski. I'm here to testify on bill number 180169, which was introduced in the City Council on March 1st, 2018 by Councilmember Heenan. Bill number 180169 amends Title 14 of the Philadelphia Code by creating regulations for semi-detached structures and making related changes. This legislation seeks to create standards for where to place the adjoining house line and the side yard in all situations that a property owner may find themselves in with the development of a semi-detached structure. This legislation is a response to the problem of structures known as twingles. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 180169 at its meeting of March 20th of this year and recommended it for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
And I believe we have an amendment for this.
Correct, from the
also.
Law Department.
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Sanchez, yes.
Can you define twingles for me, please?
A twingle is a strange thing that happens in Philadelphia where you have a number of structures that are supposed to have one party wall. So you have a single-family dwelling, another single-family dwelling. They have a party wall. It's called a twin. There are times when people build to the wrong sideline so that you have a single-family dwelling that has a party wall where no other dwelling can attach to it. And it leaves this blank wall along the street, and it breaks up the continuity of the other twins on the block. And this is an effort to try to stop people from putting the buildings on the wrong property line.
So what happens with folks who have the ability, based on that party wall, to drill into their neighbors, right? Because, for instance, I bought a house. I'm allowed to go into my neighbors when we got it redone. So what happens in those cases?
When you have a party wall, you're sitting on a party wall, the neighbor is allowed to attach to you. They should not damage your house, and if they do, you have some civil actions to take against them, but they're allowed to build on top of that party wall as it is now. What this would do would force people to build on that property wall in most cases instead of building a weird standalone single that has a blank wall on a property line.
Now, this is just for his district, or is this?
This is for twin districts, so it would handle districts such as, give me one moment, RSA 1, RSA 2, and RSA 3. So any places you can have semi-detached structures, this would give some guidance of how they should be built.
Okay.
So for a row home district, this doesn't make any difference. You could build party line to party line.
Okay. So it doesn't impact the deed and how the deeds currently read? And those?
Not at all, no.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions? Seeing none, anyone else here to testify on Bill 180169? Seeing none, Ms. Marconi, our next bill, please.
Bill number 180172, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing the zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Oakmont Street, Torresdale Avenue, Pennypack Creek, Ron Street, and Roland Avenue.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski with the City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on bill number 180172, which was introduced in the City Council on March 1st of this year by Councilmember Heenan. Bill number 180172 will amend the zoning designations of certain parcels of land located within an area bounded by Oakmont, Torresdale, Pennypack Creek, Ron Street, and Roland Avenue. This bill proposes to amend the zoning designations of certain parcels of land in the Holmesburg area to reflect their existing land use. The area is in the North Delaware District Plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission in March of 2016. The district plan process included a vetting of all these proposed changes. The Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered bill number 180172 at its meeting of March 20th of this year and recommended it for approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Again, we have an amendment map. Is that
Minor map changes,
minor
correct.
map change, right? Any questions for Mr. Gregorski? Seeing none, anyone else here to testify on bill number 180172? Seeing none. Ms. Marconi, our next bill, please.
Bill number 180173, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing zoning designations of certain areas of land located within area by Sheffield Avenue, Leon Street, Sully Avenue, Frankfurt Avenue, Stanwood Street, and Erdick Street.
Thank you.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee, Marty Gregorski with the Planning Commission, here to testify on Bill number 180173, which was introduced in the City Council on March 1st of this year by Councilmember Heenan. Bill number 180173 amends zoning designations of parcels of land in the area described. This area is in the North Delaware District Plan, which was adopted by the Planning Commission in March of 2016. District plan process included a vetting of all these proposed changes. Philadelphia City Planning Commission considered Bill number 180173 at its meeting of March 20th, 2018, and recommended it for approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? None. Moving right along here. Yeah. Anyone else here to testify on Bill number 180173? Seeing none, thank you. Ms. Marconi, our next bill, please.
Bill number 171131, an ordinance establishing a neighborhood improvement district to be known as the Northern Liberties Business Improvement District in an area that generally includes both sides of North 2nd Street from the north side of Calla Hill Street to the south side of Girard Avenue, both sides of North 3rd Street from Spring Garden Street to the south side of Woodley Street, Spring Garden Street from North 2nd Street to the eastern side of North 15th Street, and certain blocks of the street that intersect portions of these streets. Designating the Northern Liberties Business Improvement District Incorporated, which has organized itself as a Pennsylvania nonprofit corporation, as the Neighborhood Improvement District Management Association for the district. Approving a plan for the district, including a list of proposed improvements and their estimated costs, and providing for the assessment fees to be levied on property owners within the district. Authorizing the Director of Commerce on behalf of the city to execute an agreement with the Northern Liberties Business Improvement District Incorporated relating to the district, and authorizing the Northern Liberties Business Improvement District Incorporated to assess property owners within the district a special property assessment fee to be used in accordance with the approved plan, all in accordance with the provisions of the Community and Economic Improvement Act and under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, why don't you go? And then we have a couple other people on record that want to go, but please.
Good morning, Chairman Greenlee and members of the Rules Committee. My name is Dennis Murphy. I'm Director of Corridor Development within the Philadelphia Commerce Department. I'm here to testify in support of Bill number 171131, establishing the Northern Liberties Business Improvement District. Creation of bids is in keeping with our department's support of business and property owner-led efforts to improve the environment within their areas, and our goal to foster vibrant and well-managed neighborhood commercial districts. Since February 2017, property owners within Northern Liberties have worked as a steering committee to explore creating a bid. They've carried out extensive outreach, including multiple public presentations, a needs assessment survey completed by more than 300 individuals, regular monthly meetings, and door-to-door outreach. This process has been documented on a website created to provide up-to-date information about recent decision-making and to let people know how they could get involved. The result of this process is today's legislation. The bid plan dedicates funding to cleaning, beautification, parking improvements, business support and attraction, and marketing, promotions, and special events. Throughout the public engagement process, a common theme has been that Northern Liberties is a unique and growing neighborhood. But as the residential neighborhood has grown, the health of the neighborhood's business sector and conditions within the public environment have not kept pace. Key challenges include retail vacancies, an uninviting environment for pedestrians, and the lack of a unified effort to promote Northern Liberties. We commend Northern Liberties property owners and business people for coming together to address their shared challenges in a coordinated and cooperative way through creating a bid. This effort deserves the support of the city. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And just for the record, I believe we can pass this out of committee today, but it has to be held for 45 days, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Because then the community has then the right to weigh in on their yay or nay.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
During this process, were you involved with the?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Was there many concerns raised, and what were they as far as opposition to the bid?
Right. What has really distinguished this process for me, and I've worked with a lot of the bid formations, is there's a really broad base of property owners who've been championing the idea from the beginning. So even starting with the first meeting, which was publicly advertised, the reception was very positive.
Okay.
As the proposal has been developed and shared with the community, and costs have become very clear, there have been a couple property owners who are uncomfortable with the cost in addition to their regular property tax responsibility. But for the most part, the meetings that I've been to have been dominated by people who really want to see this happen.
Okay, and I know you've been involved in other bids. Have you seen over time, and I asked the Commerce Director this last week at a budget hearing, that bids overall, when they are established, even among some people who might have a problem with them originally, tend to improve the area and be a positive addition? Is that a fair statement, or?
Yeah, I think that as our director said, you can really often see the difference between an area that's cared for and that's not cared for. Oftentimes you enter a commercial district and you can actually see where the boundaries may be,
Right.
where the services are provided and where they aren't provided. The other thing I would say is that with some of the districts that have had bids, where conditions change over time with retailing, like I'm thinking of like places like Manayunk and Chestnut Hill, having a bid really allows them to be nimble and adjust and attract new retailers and really adjust over time. So startup bids really make a difference in terms of cleaning. And then some of the longer established bids have really been able to keep those areas vibrant even when they change. And I think that in Northern Liberties, they're kind of looking for both of those types of services.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Of the, you say possibly two businesses that now have reservations about this new initiative, are they on the outskirts of the district, or are they a part of the core section of the district?
I think I'll allow the steering committee to speak more directly to the opposition they've encountered, because I know that they've made an effort to speak with individuals directly, so they could give you a better picture.
Okay. Does South Street have a bid?
They do.
They do?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Well, this hearing is not for South Street, so I'll save that for later.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Okay, thank you, sir. May stay around just in case something else comes up. All right, I see Ms. Marconi's busy over there. I have two other people on the written list to come, Matt Rubin and William Reed. Are they? I see Matt, okay. Good morning. You have, we have it. Can you get the written yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, we'll let you go this time. I did the bullets. Whoever Matt, if you want to go first. Whoever like to go first. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Hi, good morning. My name is William Reed. I'm a property owner and business owner in Northern Liberties. Standard Tap is the restaurant that I co-own with my partner.
Just a little, either closer or a little louder.
A little louder? Okay, it sounds
This
like
is a hearing room that you can't hear in. So,
Okay.
You know,
thanks. So I'm a co-owner of Standard Tap at 2nd and Poplar, right in the middle of the proposed bid. I've been active in the community for about 20 years, living there, and the restaurant's been open about 18. We have a really fantastic Northern Liberties Neighbors Association, which is our civic group, and it's been instrumental in really creating a great community and a park and everything else. We've never had a business association that really functioned very well. We've had a couple startups that kind of fizzled out, and myself and several other business owners were exploring what was going on in our commercial corridor in the last few years. We're looking for better solutions for the neighborhood, and a bid was proposed actually by one of my neighbors that also owns a bar, because he has a property in East Passyunk. And East Passyunk, I think, is a model for what a bid can really accomplish. They're a powerhouse. They started a very similar kind of environment to Northern Liberties. They had some new restaurants and some excitement about the area, but not that much. And they really were able to turn that into an amazing neighborhood, both for the businesses and the neighbors. And the thing that they have there is the bid. They had a coordinator for the business corridor that really brought everybody's energy together and unified it to create something really special. So my neighbor Stephen Simon, who's actually here as well, pointed out that a bid was what, even though he was very skeptical, like everybody is, about paying an additional tax on their property, when he saw the results of it, he was just, blown away. And that was really powerful to me. We've spent the last almost 2 years, really. Formally, it's not quite 2 years, but we spent about 2 years working on this, building a consensus. I think it really is a broad support among people in the neighborhood once they learn anything about what the bid does and what we were trying to do. With that, I'll turn it
Let's
over
hear
to
from
Matt.
Mr. Rubin, and if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for this opportunity to testify in support of the creation of a Northern Liberties Business Improvement District. I'm going to be as brief as I can and try to limit myself only to what hasn't been covered by Dennis and William. First off, the Northern Liberties
Just say your name for the record, Matt.
Matt Rubin, President, Northern Liberties Neighbors Association. Sorry about that. The reason we need a Northern Liberties Business Improvement District is because the commercial redevelopment has lagged residential redevelopment in Northern Liberties. The neighborhood's well known for having explosive growth, which it has had, but the commercial vacancy rate is about 20%, which is, I think, 6 to 10 times the residential vacancy rate. There's gaps on our commercial corridor, vacant storefronts, it's dirty, it's uninviting. It's not what it should be, especially for a neighborhood with this amount of residential investment that's taken place in the last 15 years. We're virtually the only redeveloped or redeveloping neighborhood in the city with a major commercial corridor that is not managed by a BID or a similar entity, and it really shows. In addition, we face structural challenges. Even after all the growth, we're a small neighborhood. Our population density is nowhere near Queen Village, Fairmount, and other peer neighborhoods, and we don't have a critical mass of people. Work has to be done to attract people to our commercial environment. I'm going to skip for the moment all the wonderful things a BID can do just for time reasons and emphasize a little bit what's, I think, beneficial and good about the process that we've done here. Number one, it's business driven. It has been driven by commercial property owners and business owners, and we have an unusual number of those who not only run and own businesses in the neighborhood and own commercial property, but are residents. William lives in the neighborhood, and several of the other steering committee, raise your hand if you're on the steering committee or a supporter of who've come down here, also are residents in the neighborhood, and they want to do this not just for their business bottom lines, but for their families and everyday quality of life. Our assessment rate is unusually low. At 0.132%, it is less than 2/3 of the average assessment rate for the other 13 bids in the city. So we've intentionally made it as affordable as possible. Any property assessed by the city at $276,000 or less will pay what we call the $1 a day minimum, $365 a year. If you have a $100 a month is what you pay on a $909,000 property. $1 million property would pay $110 a month into the bid. So we've tried to keep it affordable. Owner-occupied residences, whether they're homes or condos, are 100% exempt forever. They get the street cleaning, they get the other services, they don't pay a penny ever. Even owner-occupied portions of mixed-use buildings, that square footage that's owner-occupied, will be exempt forever. So we are sparing homeowners and owner-occupied residences from anything to pay into the bid to ensure that it's proper and affordable. It is shock-proof. The overall bid budget is capped with no more than a 3% annual increase in the overall budget allowed by law, which means that people who pay into the bid will not find spikes in their bid assessments, unlike what sometimes happens with their property assessments. Also, it is the opposite of what happens with property taxes. As new development comes online in the neighborhood and gets assessed at high value, that reduces what existing property owners will have to pay into the bid because the overall budget is capped. It's the same pie, so the more new development comes in, the smaller a slice each owner has to pay. So you pay less as values go up and new development comes in, not more. So it's got a built-in protection mechanism for the future. all stakeholders are included. To run for the bid board of directors and to vote in those elections, you, of course, commercial property owners, but also we made it so that business owners can vote and run in those elections for maximum stakeholder involvement. The board of directors will therefore have owners and business people who run businesses, even if they're just tenants, and it will have seats for both Councilman Squilla and Council President Clark and a liaison seat for the NLNA. So everyone's buying into this. So those are some of the features that we think make this bid particularly affordable, that make it well thought out to protect homeowners and to protect bid assessment payers from future increases, and that ensure thorough stakeholder involvement moving forward. And finally, as Dennis Murphy from Commerce alluded to, we have had well over a dozen steering committee meetings that have been open to the public. The steering committee has more than 25 members on it. We've had 3 large full house public meetings, multiple postcard mailings, door-to-door literature drops, Facebook posts to our Facebook groups that have more than 5,000 subscribers, multiple emails to our 3,000 subscriber email list. And I can attest that I've personally gone door to door to certain property owners and business owners to talk to them one-on-one about this. And we also have a few dozen supporter ballots, which are an informal thing that we set up to help people indicate support. And we've particularly also done long-term individual hand-holding with some of the handful of enormous, massively high-value property owners in the neighborhood, because they're showstoppers and there was no point in doing this if we couldn't get them on board early. So we feel we've done as much due diligence as anyone could possibly do and have tried to make this as affordable and as inclusive as we possibly can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Let me ask just a question. It sounds like you've done a lot of due diligence, to be perfectly honest with you. But are there, that you're aware of, still issues out there that some people have, or what were maybe the issues that you resolved
Absolutely.
with some people?
I want to be very careful and be as accurate as I can. And I think that we can say, to the best of our knowledge, there is no organized opposition to this. There have been individuals who have expressed concerns. And the main concern is that people feel overtaxed. Mm-hmm. And they view this as a private tax, which it is. And especially when people first hear about it, they're unaware of the scale of what they'd have to pay. You can look it up on the website, but I don't blame people. They don't. They just hear there's another expense coming, and they don't look it up. Mm-hmm. And so they think they're going to have to pay a lot of money. Unfortunately, this is happening at the same time as OPA just released the new assessments. We've had to explain to people.
We're well aware of that one.
Yeah, we've had to explain to folks that the proposed new assessments are not what the first bid assessment's going to be based on, and that the bid budget is capped, but you have to get that information out there. I'll just give you one quick example. There was a business in the neighborhood that posted on Facebook that they already pay money, they clean in front of their business, mm-hmm. They're a tenant, they don't want to have to pay anymore. I went and talked to them, and they're actually in an unusually high-value building because it's a beautiful new construction building at 2nd and Brown Street in the neighborhood. And so that particular business, if their landlord passes along their portion of the cost for their square footage to them, would have to pay a little more than the average. And I told them how much it was, and they said, oh, that's fine. We thought we were going to have to pay $1,000 a month. And they're not going to have to pay $1,000 a month. They're going to have to pay like 6% of that amount. They had no understanding of what it was, and for them that was fine. Now, I don't mean to make light. Any amount of money is more than zero. But there are some folks who, for example, own buildings that they rent out to artists, and those, for the purposes of the law, are income-generating properties, and we are legally prohibited from exempting those properties. So we have to include them. And those owners, some of them feel like, I don't generate the kind of income to justify paying this. But the city also assesses those properties for the most part at a lower value, and so a lot of those properties are just paying the $1 a day minimum, the $365 a year or $30 a month. So the main issue is, I clean in front of my property, I feel like I'm taxed a lot by the city, and we try to explain that, first of all, I understand that view, and second, this is money that doesn't go, with respect, into the general fund. It stays in the neighborhood. For most people, it's a lot less than they imagined it would be when they hear what the amount is. And even residential tenants can benefit from walking through a cleaner, safer neighborhood at night on their way to and from their places. They can benefit from commercial environments that are more neighborhood-oriented, that have less turnover. They can benefit from visiting clientele that are more orderly and don't create weekend problems in front of their properties, and there's a lot of benefits for them. And the real heavy lifters in terms of who's paying a lot are the high-value mixed-use properties with real commercial uses in them.
Gotcha, okay.
Probably more than you wanted to know, sorry.
No, that's okay. We're used to that from you, Matt, that's okay. First, Councilman Squill, and then Councilman Tauber-Burger.
Thank you. And thank you, Mac and Renee, for all your work on this, understanding the difficult challenges it brings doing this in my district and now partnering with Councilman Clark's district. There are always challenges, but what you said was a great point in that the resources and dollars collected with this assessment goes to the boundaries that are being assessed. It's different than when you have, not that the city has a black hole, but the money goes into the city, nobody knows where it goes. And I think when you see the positive impacts of bids throughout the city, and I know Councilman Greenlee noted with that Commerce had said at one of our hearings that, what it means to the surrounding area, not even so much the businesses in turn, but the surrounding residents, the benefits that come from a bid far outweigh any cost associated with it. So, but it is hard to convince people that, and sometimes the best thing to do is communication, and it seems like what you have done has been above and beyond, and that's probably why you have a lot of the support that you have. You're never going to have 100% of the people always on board with everything, but I think given the opportunity, we still, with this bill passing, if it passes today through the committee, it just gives them the right to vote on this. And so they get the vote, and once the votes are counted, that'll decide the outcome. So what you have done leads the way, and hopefully it'll show benefit from some of the previous bids that have been positive. And then hopefully once you guys get up and running, if this passes, other people want businesses. There's a couple other and close by that want to start looking into this type of avenue. So I want to thank you all for your work, and appreciate the effort that you put into this, and hopefully it'll benefit the community and the surrounding area and around the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Tauber-Burger.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Rubin, I was going to ask earlier when I actually put the light on about what you did to reach out to the constituencies, but what I heard back was so overwhelmingly positive that I'm in awe of it, and want to commend you and your committee for everything they've done. But just so I heard it correctly, could you just summarize again, if you could, what you've done?
Sure. We had steering committees every month, and Renee Geilinger.
And for how many months? Was
Renee Geilinger can correct me if I get the exact. I think it's been 15 months.
That's
So we've had 15.
very good. That's good enough.
We've had 15
I'm not taking notes.
15 of those, and they've all been public, but 15 of those plus 3 official community meetings in addition to that. So 18 meetings. We did the community survey with 300 and something responses. 70 were confirmed commercial property owners. There may have been more. Sometimes you couldn't tell because it was an online survey. We have done multiple email. We have an email list with about 3,100 subscribers. We've done, I would guess, I don't know, a dozen or more mailings on that. We have 2 neighborhood Facebook groups with a total of 7,500 subscribers. We've done multiple announcements to those over the last 15 months. Renee has made postcard mailings that we've sent out 5 postcard mailings, and a lot of those are just big red letters to homeowners you don't have to pay, because we don't want homeowners filing opposition just because they don't know that they don't pay anything. So, but they've been informational mailings. We've done full-page informational mailings. We've done door-to-door flyering. And as I noted, Renee and I have done individual meetings with certain property owners and business owners who've expressed concerns. And even without concerns, we've also had a series of individual meetings with, for example, the people who own and operate the Piazza and Liberty's Walk and other the Acme Shopping Center, very large, high-value properties. So that's most of the outreach that we've done, plus a lot of worrying.
That
That's a
is
big
what-
part of it,
that-
worrying.
Mr. Rubin, that's what I thought I heard. I just wanted to make sure I heard that. That is an outstanding effort, and really, you're to be commended for that. You have gone above and beyond, I think, what most civic associations would do in this case, so
Well,
I
we owe that
really
mostly
thank
to Renee, who's our wonderful consultant.
Yes.
Well, Renee, thank you as well, officially as well, because I think that's important. Keeping contact with constituents, keeping contact with people that live in your community. I know of no better job that I've ever heard in public testimony, so
Thank you. Well, we hope it pays off. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you,
And Mr.
Council-
Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Sanchez and Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Thank you. Quick question. What are you doing with the abated value in your calculation of the bid?
We followed what the Commerce Department advised us and what other bids do, which is the bid assessment is not based on the abated value, it's based on the full value. So it's 0.132% of the city's full market value for each property. It means that the new construction, high-value properties start paying the assessment, the full assessment at the beginning. And if I could be a little editorial, I think that's actually fairer. And we haven't heard any objections
Fairer
from
than
those.
what we do. Much fairer than what we do.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
How about vacant land?
Vacant land does pay into the bid. Because vacant land tends to be assessed much lower, it pays in less until it's developed, but vacant land is not exempt, which we also think makes sense. And even if we didn't think it makes sense, we have to, but we also think it makes sense.
All right, thank you. Good
you.
luck with it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown.
Yes, good morning. I've had the good fortune to listen to testimony on a number of bids over the last many years, and I might argue that this may be the only one where the level of homework, attention to detail, thoroughness has been revealed, as is evidenced by the notion that of all of the businesses, 2 had some reservation. So when you cross your I's 15 times, cross your T's 15 times, and dot your I's twice that many more, and your effort to meet one-on-one with businesses, to hear from them up close and personal, eyeball to eyeball, obviously made a difference. So I commend you as well, having listened to bids that have wanted to become real, and the rancor, if you will, that shows up right here in Chambers, which for me is evidence that not enough homework has been done. So kudos to the good effort.
Thank you. Just for the record, I want to be clear. I know of, I believe, 4 or 5 individuals who have expressed concerns. One of them has since signed a supporter ballot, but that means there still are 3 or 4 that we've heard about who might have issues. But yes, there has not been any organized opposition that we're aware of.
And 100%, although we like to dwell in the land of possibility, 100% typically is not possible.
Sure, thank you.
Nobody agrees with everything, right? Okay, thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, again, thank you for all the work you've done. As the committee has said, you have done all the due diligence it sounds like you need to do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Renee.
Councilman
Renee,
Stoll and Council
okay, I'm
President
sorry,
Clark.
Go ahead, yeah. Did anybody, Renee, did you want to say? Oh, leave things, okay. There was written testimony listed here. Have we gotten that? Does anybody know? Ms. Gillinger, Mr. Rubin? Have we gotten, there was some written testimony said that was coming in. I don't see it on record here.
Folks are here to possibly testify.
Okay, all right.
They'll leave written.
Okay, if there's written testimony, we'll just leave it here. If there's, may not be a need to testify. Let me ask this. Is there anyone here opposed to this bill? Okay, why don't you come on up? Come on. I think it might be easier to do it that way. See if there's
I'm really interested in having a...
Well, hold on. Wait till you sit down. If you're going to say something, you have to wait till you speak in the microphone. First, state your name, and then whatever you like to say.
Edward Dorm. I'm not particularly interested in making this a public discussion. I don't really
Okay,
agree
all
with
right.
any
Well,
of
if you're not
this.
going to test, if you're not, then, okay.
I will do this in writing and
Okay.
not in a public manner. Thank you.
Anybody else that wishes to testify in this bill? Seeing none, we'll move to our last bill. Ms. Marconi, will you please read the title, please?
Bill number 180100, an ordinance to amend the Philadelphia zoning maps by changing zoning designations of certain areas of land located within an area bounded by Broad Street, Susquehanna Avenue, 13th Street, and Diamond Street, further to adopt the master plan amendment for Temple University, and to approve the construction project on the site proposed for rezoning, and to approve the removal of previously planned construction projects from the master plan.
Before you start, Ms. Gorski, I just want to put on record, I talked to the sponsor beforehand, Council President Clark. He wishes to have all the testimony presented today, but then he's asking the committee to hold it in committee for further discussions afterwards. So that's what we'll do. So we're not going to move the bill today, but we will hear from people expressing their opinion on it. Mr. Gregorski, please start.
Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, members of the Rules Committee. I'm Marty Gregorski, Division Director with the Development Division of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission, here to testify on Bill number 180100, which was introduced in the City Council on February 15th of this year by Councilmember Greenlee for Council President Clark. Bill number 180100 will rezone a property in the area bounded by Broad Street, Susquehanna Avenue, 13th Street, and Diamond Street from its existing RM1 residential multifamily and CMX2 neighborhood commercial mixed use to a new SPINS institutional special purpose district. The bill then approves a master plan amendment for Temple University to permit the construction of a 4-story, 95,000 square foot mixed-use building referred to as the Alpha Center. The building will provide a range of services for children and adults in the surrounding community, including an early learning center, a dental clinic, psychology and counseling services, classrooms for adult education, shared use space, an outdoor playground, community training area and office, and workspace for the College of Education. Civic Design Review Committee held a meeting on this project on April 3rd of this year, where they requested that the project come back for a second meeting. Philadelphia City Planning Commission will consider Bill number 180100 at an upcoming meeting, where the staff will recommend it for approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Gregorski on this bill? All right, seeing none, okay. I know there are people here to testify on this bill. Why don't we first have Dean Anderson from Temple or Mrs. Sklar, whoever, and then we'll have other people who wish to testify. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Whoever would like to go first. Oh, and please let the record reflect Councilman Jones, member of the committee, is present.
Good morning,
Whoever would like to go.
Mr. Chairman. I am Neil Sklarov, and I have the honor of representing Temple University.
A little
this
closer
morning.
to the mic, Neil, please.
With me today is Dozie Ebay, who is the Associate Vice President for Project Delivery, and to my far right is Dr. Gregory Anderson, Dean of the College of Education. We have submitted some materials, and Dr. Anderson will do the presentation.
Okay.
Good morning, members of the Philadelphia City Council Rules Committee. I'm Gregory Anderson. I'm the Dean of the College of Education. I'm here to speak in favor of Bill number 180100, which amends Temple University's master plan and expands the SPINS district to include a small area of Temple-owned land at 13th and Diamond Streets. We're asking for favorable action on this bill to allow the construction and operation of what we're calling Temple Alpha Center. And I'm putting that in quotation marks because it's a placeholder name. It will not be called the Alpha Center. The Alpha Center is a project of the College of Education. The proposed building will bring together in one facility located close to the community a number of community services which will allow for innovation among the different services and an ease for access for members of the community. The College of Education's goal is to capitalize on its well-recognized areas of excellence by working with our partners to deliver high-quality professional services to the North Philadelphia community. The College of Education plans a state-of-art early learning center for children ages 2 to 5 years old. 70 to 80% of the children served at the early learning center will come from the surrounding neighborhoods. We plan to utilize what we already know about best practices and what we will learn through conducting research at the Early Learning Center to create a high-quality professional development opportunities to daycare providers in North Philadelphia community. Our intent is to provide professional development support and services to assist daycare operators and their staffs to obtain high Pennsylvania Keystone STARS ratings demonstrating excellence. Temple University School of Dentistry will locate a dental practice and a clinic in the Alpha Center. We will also focus on assistance to people with disabilities, supports for families with children with autism, and the provision of workforce development and college access programs. We will bring in community members to serve as mentors to at-risk children. There will be psychological and other counseling services, classrooms for adult education, shared use space, community training, meeting areas, and workspace for the College of Education. Community groups will schedule meetings by reservation in available rooms in the building. Faculty and students from a variety of interdisciplinary programs within the College of Education will collaborate with the Alpha Center and engage with academic and community organizations. However, just to be clear, we will not have any drug rehabilitation services at the Alpha Center. There was a claim that we would, so I want to stipulate that clearly. I hope the Rules Committee will pass along a favorable recommendation to the City Council, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, are you testifying or are you just here for support?
questions,
Okay.
yes.
You had meetings with the community, with RCO? Or?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and what concerns were raised and how did you address them, if they, particularly dealing with this issue?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess the biggest concern is the historical tension between the university and the surrounding communities regarding, you know, what the T stands for. Does it stand for temple or takeover, quite frankly? Other concerns were whether the services that were going to be offered through the facility were the services that the community needed. And in response to that, I just wanted to be clear that if the College of Education has a set of services we provide. There are other services across the university that other units, academic units or colleges or schools provide, but I don't have access to them. So what we did is we did an audit of the needs of the community, and then we married that with the assets that we have at the college. So we tried to address it through that fashion. And then quite frankly, there's an association with another proposal involving a facility that has caused tension. But I just want to make clear that I've been here for, I'm trying to be as vague as possible. I've been here since 2013. I've been pushing for this proposal since I arrived. I have experience in terms of an early learning childhood center. I ran one at the University of Denver where I was the dean there. I also was on the advisory board for the Columbia University Teacher College Rita Gold Early Learning Center. I'm committed to early learning. I think it's one way to actually provide equal opportunity for children regardless of their zip code. And then there were a host of other services that we had that were never integrated. I have a host of psychological programs that never saw themselves as connected to the community. Even though we offered the services in the university, it wasn't being used. So we were trying to think of a way to have a one-shop, if you will, pardon the description, facility where these integrated services would serve the community in terms of what the data indicated were desperate needs.
Okay, thank you. And was there anything that you're proposing here that directly was opposed by the community of the services that were proposed?
No, there were concerns that in providing a new early learning center that we would be competing with existing early learning center facilities and home-based care facilities. But we looked at the data, and what we see is that the demand for early childhood education services actually far exceeds the supply. So we know that in terms of numerically looking at the data is not the case. There was also a concern particularly that many of the home-based care facilities or home-based services for early childhood education focused on toddlers and infants. So we made a purposeful decision not to actually have programming involving infants and toddlers because there was a concern that we would undermine home-based care. So those were the kinds of things that were raised.
So you made some adjustments based on your discussions?
We're continuing to make adjustments, and I would say that we're, the community engagement has to be ongoing. We're nowhere near complete. So, there was one other thing that wasn't really a concern raised in terms of the community level was the extent to which I could share some of the information involving the proposed center because it's had a number of stops and starts within the university. And at one point I was concerned that if I continued to talk about a proposed center that wasn't going to come to fruition, that I'd be making false promises. So there has been sort of a stop and start kind of process here.
And this is right at 13th and Diamond, correct?
Yes, it's
And what's
right,
there now? What is there?
It's a parking lot. Right
Parking
now.
lot? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Councilwoman Reynolds-Brown, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
You're reading my notes here because one question I have here is, do you know of other higher ed institutions around the country primarily in an urban community that has taken on this type of model, and you mentioned the University of Denver.
Yes, I do know there are many higher education institutions that have taken on early childhood care facilities, but in my view, quite frankly, and I've run some of them, they haven't focused enough attention on the children from the surrounding communities. In fact, what happens, and there's been some pressure on me as a dean within Temple for the facility to be used for children affiliated with Temple University employees, and I refuse that to be the approach because we have a social justice mission at the college.
Thank you. So does the College of Education have an early childhood education as a major?
We do, and it's actually our largest undergraduate major.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's early childhood and elementary education.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did my internship in undergraduate school at an early child care center that was close to Penn State. So I get and fully understand the connect with having currently enrolled students have a place where they can practice their craft before going out into the real world. With regards to demographics, which was another question I had here, so speak to us about the type of homework and research you had to do to even justify this type of enterprise.
Well, the first thing we did is we looked at census tract data, and we looked to see how many, in the Keystone star ratings, how many 1s and 2s versus the top 3s and 4 early childhood facilities were in the immediate catchment area. And we found that actually it was a sea of 1s and 2s with a rubber dinghy of 3 and 4s. There just aren't a lot, quite frankly. The vast majority of 3s and 4s on average serve, when you look at the entire population of children that it would be available to, 5, 6 students per facility. So there's a clear need for quality. But we knew that we couldn't solve the issue simply by providing an early learning center. What we are also trying to do is use the facility to be a hub for professional development so that we will be able to engage with the 1s and 2s in terms of the early learning facilities and the home-based services and provide professional development so we can raise the threshold standards for everyone. So we looked there. Then we looked at the point of view of health and behavioral and other outcomes, and we're seeing at the school district that 1 in 5 children, particularly in North Philadelphia, are experiencing or showing signs of mental distress, trauma, or mental disorders. And yet 80% of those children will not receive any health care or any mental health services. So we knew that that was an immediate need as well. And remember now, I'm not saying that you should remember. I don't mean it that way.
Sure.
That I have a counseling psychology program with 80 graduate students. I have an educational psychology program. I have a school psychology program that focuses on testing for children with special needs. We've had these clinics in the university, and the community doesn't use them despite a sliding scale to support access.
You said the community does?
And doesn't use them to the extent that I feel that we have capacity. And I think it's because we're scattered all over the university, so there isn't one facility. And also, quite frankly, the community doesn't always view the university as a resource. And so what we're trying to do is provide an innovative, integrated, accessible place for the community to actually access these services.
Have you gone out to actually visit with up close and personal, eyeball to eyeball, other child care providers in the area?
Yes, and not just me personally, but many of my faculty, because as I said, the largest undergraduate program we have is in early childhood elementary education. And I'm not here to say that this is all altruism. There's a benefit for our students, as you mentioned, in terms of the internships. The most difficult place we have in terms of high quality placements are our early childhood teacher ed candidates.
Is that a fact?
It is. It is because of the variety and the bandwidth and resources available for the early learning centers.
Any conversation with the Mayor's Office of Education and their pre-K initiative?
Yes, and in fact, I'm on the Running Start Steering Committee, and I've been using the data as well as conversations from my colleagues and learning about the desperate need for this. So we've carefully coordinated it. I've talked to the superintendent of the school district to make sure that this would be complementary to their initiatives.
You also spoke about home care providers, and you're talking about those 99.9% women,
Yes.
who take care of little people in their home. So you've had an outreach with them as well?
Yeah, they're a little more difficult to outreach with because they're often sort of word of mouth, and some of them are operating on the margins in terms of how they're billing or whether they're billing in particular ways. But we're hoping to actually have more outreach in terms of nonprofit partners that we know have credibility that we may not have as a college.
Sure.
To work with them and bring them into the professional development opportunities that we hope to provide.
Well, not knowing where this will end up, what I would urge you to do is I do know that the Department of L&I maintains a record of licensed family child care providers. And so that's one way of touching those women right there in the community that care about kids, so that there's some interface with them as well.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sanchez.
Yes. Thank you. I want to thank you for your recognition that you have a strange relationship with the community, and that adds to the tension. I live under the Temple T because I'm a neighbor. I'm a little concerned because, and I think this is something that sometimes in large institutions like yourselves, you got to check yourself, right? And I think part of the challenge that you're going to have with this proposal is that when you become a competitor in an area where people are K1 and 2, not because they don't want to get to 3, but because of lack of resources, that you not start there, right?
Right.
So the institution should look at itself as, and you mentioned that a little bit, but it's after you begin to become competitive with the folks in the community. And so you may want to rethink that as part of your proposal and say, because of the historic nature of the relationship, let us focus in where you get an opportunity to place your students and you build this capacity before you become a competitor in an area. No one's going to be able to compete with Temple in the area.
Right. No, thank you.
So I think that this is an opportunity. The center has a lot of good aspirational goals, but in the environment in which we're operating, it's going to be a hard sell to folks, because once you come in and you start providing, we are building many big institutions here, too big to fail. We have the constant conversation about the competitive nature of what we're doing. So let me caution you and ask you to really rethink that, because that is a challenge for the community there. Because I think in this arena, but because of the level of expertise that you have, this is definitely one area that you could really help the Temple community out in. You mentioned earlier that one of the issues that came up in the discussion was the community's concern around their access to the variety of university services that exist that are not under your control. And you talked a little bit about how you intended to respond to that with what you control, but not necessarily the other departments. You realize it's really hard for people to separate the Temple T.
I do.
T is T.
I do.
So what are you doing about the other services that the university recognizes is not adequately being accessed by the community?
Well, one thing that we did was I approached all of the deans, because we have a council of deans, and asked them if they were interested in collaborating on the project. Some of them did and some of them didn't. So the dean of the dentistry indicated that they wanted to build a dental clinic, focusing on the community, but also having a mixed model. So what I'm really truthfully hoping for is that if we are successful, that then I can, because higher ed always mimics each other, then I can get more people and more units to come in and partner with us.
I don't think you have an opportunity to wait for that. I really don't. I think you're going to put people like us and public officials, President Clark, which is in this district, to make really bad choices, because you are at the brink of, right, all this growth around your area, all this tension, and you can't say to us, let me experiment, I'm going to do it better, because the community's been there before, right?
Sure.
And so if you want to be successful, I think Temple has to look at this as not a school of education project, but a Temple project.
I agree with you.
And they have to break down those barriers for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. But there's a certain, and I'm not making excuses. This is a fight that we're going to have, a struggle I'm going to have. I have every.
No, it's a fight that's been going on for 20, I've lived in
Exactly.
the neighborhood under Temple T for 20 years.
Yes.
It's a 20-year fight.
Right, but it's an ongoing fight within the university itself. I mean, there's a reality too that I know where my pay grade is. I'm pushing for change as much as I can within the parameters of what I'm able to do. I'm looking for partners and collaboration, people to collaborate, and I need to. You're absolutely right. In order to do it properly, we're going to have to expand.
Right. And so the message is not necessarily for you, because you talk about your pay grade. It is about Temple not putting other leadership in that position, because given what's going on, we're going to need that comprehensive. And I'm sure one of the reasons why the council president has asked us to hold that off is because he's going to have to intervene. But, you know, I think at a certain point, Temple's going to have to own this and really own this in a way that's a little bit more thoughtful. And so I would caution you on being competitive in an environment where we have a lot of very good providers. There's a lot of K1 and 2 providers that are really, really good that we need to support, and figuring out a real plan for how you support them. What we saw in the mayor's initial investment, and I was one that advocated for 1s and 2s, is immediately once the mayor's people came in, those centers became 3 and 4s very quickly, right? So we all knew it wasn't about quality.
Yeah.
It was about the ability to get that infusion of money. So good luck with it. So the message is to Temple, please don't put us in the middle of this stuff.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will convey that to them.
Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, you had another question?
What hurdles did you run into with Denver?
The biggest hurdle I had was that as the quality of the early learning center continued to improve, and I couldn't get children from the community in the early learning center. So what I'm trying to do, quite frankly, is turn that model on its head, because then it became sort of access to advanced opportunities for folks that had the resources to go elsewhere. And that was a struggle. It was a political struggle when I'm arguing with the football coach about his 3-year-old being in an early learning center. Those are the kinds of things that I had to struggle with, and I vowed that I wanted to actually have a different approach. The one thing, can I just say, if I may, that the 130 seats for that would be the early learning center, that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we're hoping to do to speak to the professional development piece. We know that it's about staff qualifications. You're right, a 1 or 2 is often defined by the staff qualifications. It doesn't mean that that isn't an excellent early learning center, but the bottom line is staff qualifications also mean an increase in the star rating and also increase in compensation. So what we're trying to do is actually have a much bigger footprint with the professional development than with the actual early learning center, because it only has 130 seats. So, and the proof will be in the pudding. We're going to have to produce something of value, and it's something that's sustained and scalable. But we have to hit the reset button somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm not the only one, I hope, but I'm here trying to do it. So that's all I can say, with the complete agreement that the community members have every right to demand what's best for themselves and demand more from us. But I'm trying to at least start in a different place. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm trying.
Okay. Councilwoman Sanchez was very direct in acknowledging the tension that is in our faces. And so for me, it raises a question around process. Was there an effort to reach before acting, or did you do the homework and present a document and not include those who are going to be most impacted by this?
The first thing I did, because I work within an organization, is try to figure out, do we have the assets to actually produce something of quality? So the first thing I did was an internal audit of my whole college, and to see whether we could integrate services in a way that we haven't done before. The second thing I did then was look at data, and then I didn't do it on my own. Obviously, I have a whole bunch of faculty. Look at data to see whether what we were proposing would be competitive, or would it be augmentative or complementary. And it isn't as simple as saying it wouldn't be competitive. You're right. I can't say that it wouldn't. But to see in terms of the scope of capacity, whether the competitive piece would be smaller than the benefits for the larger community. So that was the second thing. The third thing I did was then go to the president and provost and ask for consideration of proposal. And that's been a process, because it's a complex, fluid organization and priorities change all the time. So I've been pushing this since 2013. And then when I finally felt like I had enough momentum, so for example, the property that we're proposing for the Early Learning and Community Engagement Center to be located on was purchased by the university off the school district. And that was something I actually had to push for the university to do.
You said it was purchased by whom?
The university purchased it off the school district.
Oh.
It's on the back end of Elverson Military Academy, for those that are familiar with it. So I had to do all of that before I could even think about presenting anything to community representatives, because I was scared that I wouldn't be able to get it that far. And then when we started 2 years ago, and it was about 2 years ago, discussions with the community, then I had to stop because it looked like we weren't going to be able to get it over the line. I won't bore you with the details, but it was quite complicated to actually get it this far. It involved new market tax credits and things like that. So, and now I feel like we actually have to engage with the communities, have salon events, have a lot of things, but we're also struggling with other associations that are going on in terms of what Temple is planning. And it's unfortunate because it's timing. I can't do anything about that other than do what I believe is right.
I live in Councilman Jones' district. I live a yard's throw from St. Joseph University, and have had to, as a neighbor and a resident of that community, reckon with what Councilwoman Sanchez has spoke very eloquently to, and was a member of my neighborhood association to participate in a gazillion meetings to help St. Joe understand we can be friendly neighbors, but there has to be some level of reciprocity. One of the issues that my block had a huge concern about was parking.
Yes.
And so we figured out a win-win. It took us 4 years under former Councilman Nutter to figure it out in a way where the community was kept whole and St. Joe was able to advance its mission while keeping the community whole. So I share that with you as an example of the work and the authenticity that's required as you go down this road.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe just hang around in case there's any questions that might come back up. Ms. Marconi, I think we have a number of people who want to testify. Why don't we call them in panels of 3?
Linda Richardson, Bianca Parker, Paula Peebles.
Okay. Okay, whoever would like to start, if I could just say, I know we have a number of people on testify. We do have another hearing scheduled in a little bit this afternoon, so we certainly want you to get your point across, but we ask you to be
RCO speak first.
summaries. Whoever would like to go first, please.
Yeah, my name is Linda Waters Richardson. I'm president of the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation, and we were the RCO that met to review the proposal. The Uptown boundaries go from 13th Street to 18th Street, from Diamond to Glenwood, with our core work from 13th Street to 15th, and from Diamond to York, based on our resources and funding. The RCO that heard the proposal, our RCO, made some recommendations, and we were basically opposed to the project based on 4 issues. One was the transparency. The dean talked about the 2-year gap. We heard some of the proposals 2 years ago. The RCO made some recommendations in terms of usage. We did not hear back from them until our March 13th meeting, when, because of the process for the Planning Commission, they had to present the proposal. So while it was characterized internally by what was going on within Temple. The community did not hear anything. And that's a concern. So the concern that we had was the transparency. Second concern was the fact that the neighbors directly across from the proposed project had a concern about foot traffic and traffic, what's going to happen in terms of that, and a concern about whether or not once the building was used for that project, would it be used for something else? So based on some of the real concerns, and there was an ancillary comment that one of the community members runs a track club and was not able to use some of the resources, particularly at William Penn, the former William Penn High School. And so there was a real concern about the use of the community and inviting the community when some of the community members don't have that kind of opportunity to use services. As a CDC, operating since 1995, I personally have built businesses and therefore, as part of our plan, wanting to have daycare centers. So we were able to attract some daycare centers that were indigenously owned, and we did have a concern about the competition and wanting to make sure that these daycare centers continue to thrive and continue to service our community. And finally, our concern was based on the efficacy and cultural competency and whether or not those issues based on some of the educators in our RCO concern about some of the Temple-based schools that don't have good track records. And so that was one of the concerns within our RCO. And so for those reasons of transparency, competition, educational efficacy, foot and vehicle traffic, we are opposed to this project.
Okay, thank you. And I believe, I thought I saw a letter. Did you submit a letter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
That will be made part of the record,
Yes,
too.
yes, I would,
Okay.
so,
We'll hear
yes.
from all three, and then whoever would like to go next. Please identify yourself in person.
My name is Bianca Parker, and I'm a resident. My mom, born and raised here. My grandparents, great-grandparents, born and raised here. Temple, we don't want Temple Stadium, and we don't want Temple Master Plan for North Philadelphia. It's detrimental to the African-American community. Gentrification is colonization, and again, we don't want it. We don't want it.
Thank you.
Good morning, council persons. Mr. Chairman, my name is Paula Peebles. I am the chair of the National Action Network, which is a statewide organization, as well as probably one of the oldest CDCs in the city, Renaissance Community Development Corporation, which was incorporated in 1971. I'm an indigenous member of this community. I am a graduate of Temple University, where I paid for my education, so they didn't give me anything. I don't owe them a dime. I paid for my education. However, I come here to address you today to oppose the development of the Alpha Center. When you think about divorces and two people can't get along, there's irreconcilable differences, there's usually a divorce, an amenable divorce that occur. If there's two neighbors that can't get along, there's usually an agreement where there's a divorce. Most time, the neighbor that doesn't like the other neighbor will leave. We've tried that for about 5 decades to get Temple to leave, but we've not been successful in doing so. We came pretty close about 3 decades ago. In the case of the Alpha Center, they sit here as they did with William Penn. high school that had an Olympic-sized pool, a relatively new high school. They were able to lie, do the bait and switch, and maneuver to get a soccer field for their students. They lied to the community. They used blackface on white power to do it, black labor unions, et cetera, to come to our community and say they were going to do training, they were going to have educational institution. One labor union had a nerve to say they were going to relocate their training institution from Exton, Pennsylvania to serve our community. Lies. There was a state senator she's no longer there now, lied to the community about 10th and Cecil B. Moore, the University Village, told us they were going to provide jobs for our community. There was going to be a trust fund set up for the local CDCs so that we wouldn't have to struggle to be able to do programs that we had to compete with Temple on. It never happened. Lies. The same thing happened with John Wanamaker School. They used an old right-wing, minister from Bright Hope Baptist Church. He's no longer there now. He's running for Congress. But they used him to come forward to the community saying, oh, we're going to build retail development. There's going to be charter schools at the John Wanamaker site. None of that have come to pass. So we know Temple is always a bait and switch. And it's no different with this project. The Alpha project has sat on the back burner. He said 2 years is 5 years. Ironically, they brought it forward, and all of a sudden they want to do this project. That's why none of the community has any input, because it's with haste that they brought it forward as a result of the community organizing and coming out against the stadium. So it's a bait and switch. Show you we're going to do the Alpha Center, something for the community, which at the end of the day, it's not for us. It's going to be for them. We don't need them to provide daycare centers. They will put our local indigenous daycare developers out of business. If you go from Broad Street to 6th Street, we have at least 5 daycare centers, all of them owned by either Latino or African American operators. We don't need Temple to do that for us. The other thing is the building that they're talking about putting in, we've had no input. What our position is in opposing Temple, it is irreconcilable differences. What we suggest and what we're asking council, and directly our council person, Darrell Clark, he's the president of council, but he represents the 5th district. We do not want Temple to encroach, expand any further into our communities. If they want to develop, go up. Go up. But you do not expand and displace our people. We stand in our position.
Okay, thank you. Any
We're
questions?
we don't want to compromise. We don't want to compromise with Temple. We want Temple to leave us alone. We don't want to compromise.
Any other questions?
Oh, I'm willing to take any questions.
Councilman Reynolds Brown?
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning, Councilwoman.
Linda Richardson, you mentioned that the foot vehicle traffic. Can you talk about that, please?
One of the members of the RCO had a concern about whether or not her house is directly across from the proposed project, and whether or not it was going to have any more noise, more activity, and particularly some of the documented concerns about Temple students, having noise and parties and so forth. And while we know that this is probably in the 9 to 5, we're not sure. So that came directly from a neighbor who lives across from the proposed
Have
project.
you seen any, I guess you call them schematic designs of the building, and is parking as a part of that?
There were plans submitted to the RCO.
Forgive me, what did you
There
say?
were plans submitted, some design submitted to the RCO.
Do you
But
know
that
if
was the recommendation that came out of the meeting.
So do you know if parking was a part of it? To get it, the proposal for it to be off the street?
Yeah, no, that was not clear. That was not clear in the proposals.
Okay. So am I hearing that neighbors from that community are not able to use the William Penn Field?
That's right.
That's correct.
Okay. So that's based on personal experience? Is based on something you've seen in writing? Is based on young
The
people being
testimony
told?
from a member of the community who actually participated in our RCO meeting for review of the Alpha Center. And he particularly was concerned because he has a group of young men that he's mentoring, and they were told to get off of the field.
So,
Previously, they had some agreement, but in his testimony, and I have, in my letter, I do have a list of all the people who attended the RCO meeting.
Councilman Jones can, I'm sure, speak to that question for us in Winfield in more detail. But what I do know is that for a second, St. Joe attempted to have some type of pushback, and ultimately, the district council person who I say could speak in more detail, the neighbors and St. Joe worked out an experience where it's shared use. And so that happens even today, and that came with some struggle as well. But my personal opinion, when young people can't use a field, there's something seriously wrong with that. With regards to Ms. Peoples, talk more about what happened to John Wanamaker.
John Wanamaker was a middle school. Ironically, when we look at the schools that were destroyed in our community, Councilwoman, I thank you for the question. William Penn was a high school in our community that served our community catchment area, and John Wanamaker was the middle school in our area. And what happened when Temple came forward with that development, of course, they're going to say it wasn't us, it was private developers. The private developers are only the face that they put on the Temple expansion. We're used to that. And what happened, Reverend Kevin Johnson was the pastor of Bright Hope at that time. And this can be confirmed by the board at Bright Hope even today, even though he's no longer there. He told not only his church members, he told the local community that in fact Bright Hope was going to buy the site, and they were going to establish a charter school, retail development, training, after school programs, all those things that we need within our community. We didn't believe him. National Action Network didn't believe him, so we went to the hearing. We opposed Bright Hope getting the project even at that time. And of course they were offering money. Money was given. And the next thing we knew, Bright Hope was no longer interested in the development of the John Wanamaker site. He subsequently was removed from Bright Hope, and developers received that site.
And so what's there today?
Temple housing, right now they're building a second set of over 800 units within the residential community. If I might add, Councilwoman, that's the other thing about the Alpha Center. They do not take in consideration of the design of the community. This building is about 4 stories tall, right across the street from the historical People's Village that was the development of homes that was the result of the Charette Agreement. When you hear me say 5 decades fighting Temple, that's true, because the Charette Agreement was a result of, and you can do the research on this, the 1968 agreement between the state, the local indigenous community of Norris Homes, of Berean Institute, which Reverend Jerome Cooper was there at that time, to assure that Temple would not further encroach and displace residents of North Philadelphia. But somehow, depending on who was in council, who was in the state house, they were able to twist and turn, and Temple has now begun to continue over the last 20 years to displace people of North Philadelphia and encroach our community. When they talk about the Alpha Center and allowing children between the age of 2.5 to 5 years, right across the street, the children are no longer there because Norris Public Housing is a ghost town. When you read about the plan to bring Norris Homes back, if you read it, what they say is, oh, we're not bringing them all back. That's what they always do, so that Temple can indeed take more control of land that abets a Temple University footprint. This way displacing the indigenous, particularly African Americans and secondarily Latinos from the North Philadelphia community.
So today, that's an 8-story building?
The Alpha Center is going to be 4-story, and they put a wall around it. Wanamaker is 8 stories, yes ma'am, yes it is, that they're building right now. And I invite council to go over there and see. I invite council to put on your running gear and try to get in William Penn Field. You don't have to take our word, try to do it, especially if you're an African American face.
Then lastly, you told me that there are 5 child care providers from where to where now?
Broad Street down to 6th and Girard.
And it is in your view where those 5 are adequately capturing all the little people that need services?
Yes.
Broad Street to 6th, what did you say now?
Broad Street, we're going to east, Councilwoman. Broad Street to 6th and Girard. I'm just talking about along the Girard Avenue corridor. I'm not even talking about the home-based daycare providers. See, what has been the history, and that's why it continues to be contention between the indigenous population of North Philadelphia and Temple University, the indigenous nonprofit, is because Temple comes in and try to duplicate our programs. And as a result of them being big TU, they're able to co-opt and therefore cause nonprofits to go out of existence, and therefore in this case will cause daycare providers to no longer be able to continue to stay in business.
Did you fully capture the scenario presented by Councilwoman Sanchez?
Oh, I loved her presentation, absolutely.
And so with that said, and if there's data to suggest that there's still little people not being serviced, how do we reckon, because ultimately it's young people, little people, anyone under 5.
Right.
Who I mean, they're wait lists for child care providers.
We would like to see
understand my point. I'm not advocating for Temple. Right now, my interest is how do we serve little people in homes who need quality child care experiences?
First thing we need to do is to find out if in fact the parents want them in quality child care facilities. Some parents don't want their children to go to early learners. We may disagree. I'm an education major. We may disagree with that. However, there are parents that don't want to send their children to school until kindergarten or even 1st grade.
Let me deal with the nuance here. Family child care
typically
goes up to what, 24 months maybe?
Yes.
And so I'm talking about that two-year-old toddler to 4 years old. So the home care providers, we do have to have a way to keep them whole and make sure that, that there's some sense of quality too. I've actually passed a couple of bills to better help family child care providers. But for those between the ages of 2 and 4 years,
right,
the mayor's office has produced data which says that there are still wait lists for quality child care experiences for that age group.
Then I think what the discussion may be around the definition of quality is like what Temple says, community. We say, oh, how do you define community versus how we define community? And the same thing would be in relationship to quality daycare. I know Acilero, for example, is located on Marshall Street, a full-fledged, that's right there below 6th and Girard, a full-fledged daycare center, a Head Start program that provides daycare center experiences for children from 2.5 up to 5 years. And we could go through this all day. What we're saying, Council Lady, and I thank you for the opportunity, that we don't need Temple to duplicate these type of services. If anything, we need to empower people in our community to be able to set up daycare centers, to be able to go to an educational institution to be able to get licensed. That's what we're here for. That's what CDCs are. That's what OCOs, what's they called? OCOs, right? RCOs, I'm sorry. RCOs are to make certain that we are able to empower the indigenous people of communities to be able to do for self.
So you're talking about technical assistance to strengthen their existing
absolutely,
operations.
Absolutely. We don't need Temple to do that.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank
you. Before I recognize Councilman Jones, Councilman Taubenberger, I just want to say what I'd like to do is hear if other people have questions for Temple. We'll hear from everybody first, so we're not bringing people back and forth, if that's okay. And the chair will also recognize, or record will reflect that Councilwoman Bass, member of the committee, is present, Councilman Jones, and Councilman Taubenberger.
making sure it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. Town and gown issues aren't anything new. I faced them with St. Joe's, as Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown talked about. I think LaSalle is town and gown issues. So with Temple, you used the analogy of a divorce, irreconcilable differences. The reason why you get to that is because, not because the single act of today, it's a decade, 2 decades, 5 decades of not working it out. So you wind up divorced, not at the divorce table. You were divorced along the way because of interactions that did not happen. Now,
No promises.
when it comes to credibility, you guys sound like great folks. But I know these folk over here. Okay? I know Reverend Moore. I know the people who have spent time in North Philadelphia to work on community engagement and those town and gown issues. I also know, I got a little bit of North Philly cred, not a lot, but I was a track coach at my kids grew up on that field. So if I had my grandkids now, would I be able to go down there and have them participate? My kid ran through college because of you guys and got that. So is that opportunity still afforded to future generations today? And I hear head shaking. I don't see that. Councilwoman Reynolds Brown was right. For a brief week, the new president of St. Joe's came and said, we are closing down the track because we don't want the liability of what could happen on. I said, are you out of your mind? You want to be a good neighbor. You telling me you're going to put a fence up so that people can't participate in something that is a community asset? You can't do that. You cannot do that and then think that a body like this is just going to ignore that. I also got a little bit of North Philly cred from the old Philadelphia Company store at 16th and Cecil B. Moore. We spent a lot of time down there, and we've watched that neighborhood change. We put money in another lifetime from the Philadelphia Commercial Development Corporation. We put money in that area. It is a very different area and not as welcoming as it once was. So these are irreconcilable differences that build up over time. That high school, William Penn, my daughter ran in those track and field in the indoor and got to swim in the pool as a result of it. Are those opportunities still there today? And if they were taken away for one reason, how do you build back that good relationship with the neighborhood now? You can't just say, I'm going to open up daycare. And no, we're not going to close the mom and pop shops that already exist. We're going to build them up if you don't have credibility from decades ago. So I'm glad that my president is holding on this bill to give time for you guys to make amends, for you to try to make it up. And maybe you can't, but you damn sure should try. Go up. Or go up. In St. Joe's, we have more of a suburban campus. We have more land mass to choose from. You are kind of crowded, so you have some engineering challenges. But the other thing is the Wanamaker School. The Wanamaker School had closed, but it served as a resource when the hurricane came through.
Right after.
And there was thousands and thousands of refugees. They came all the way up to North Philly and got services there. And so I'm wondering what we do going forward to replace those things that may not be important to a big institution like Temple, but were vital to the community and those engagements. We're getting ready. I just left St. Joe's and Gompers, which is the school right next door to it, where they've adopted, they come in and they do tutoring for those kids. They didn't just acquire the building and make it a dorm. They said, all right, we're going to live in the neighborhood we find ourselves in to make it better. Town and gown issues are important so that we don't get to irreconcilable differences of today. And whoever is shepherding that should at least try in this case, because you're going to be back. You'll be back about this. We have a date certain that we're going to. Oh, I'm sorry. We may have a date certain. But what I'm saying to you is that the president of this body is giving you a second opportunity to go try to make up, buy some flowers, do something to try to make it work. Because right now, the case that is being laid before us is not a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just address something that the councilman said?
Please, quickly, because we're really getting back.
Thank
We're really
you.
getting
All right,
back
I'll
up.
be very quickly. Speak very quickly. Councilman Jones, you said something about St. Joe's not closing you out. Just on this one project we're discussing today, the Alpha Center, a part of their site development is a wall. That's what they do to North Philadelphia, is they wall us out, they fence us out. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councilman Taubenberger, you have a question? or-
Yeah, do not leave, because the question is directed to you, and I appreciate your testimony, or you may have the answer.
To me, Paula Peebles?
Yeah, Paula
Okay.
Peoples. I mean,
All right.
it was brought up, and you might have the answer, and if you don't, it's okay,
No
but
problem, Councilman.
your discussion was...
There's just three ladies here, so I didn't know which one of us you were talking
Well,
about.
I want the three of you there, because collectively, you may have the answer and you may not, and it's really a very, very simple question, but just let me give a little background. I am a very passionate soccer fan. One time I played quite a bit, and I was much thinner. Access, that's true. Access to soccer fields, I think, is very important. I also think it's important what an institution says to its neighbors. You had just testified that you had initially had access to the soccer field, and now you do not. That was taken away.
I testified that one of our members, who is a young African-American male voluntarily working with young people in the community, went to the field and they started activity, and they were thrown out. Now, for us, we train young people and help young people to become, citizens
Sure.
and good neighbors. And so we encourage volunteerism. So to have a volunteer, young man taking his own time, working with other young people in the community who are underserved, to be able to have a organization that he is working with young people and then to be thrown out, is a really disservice, because then he has to work with the young people to continue to give them hope. And to make sure they understand
Understood.
that this is important to him.
It's very important.
So,
It's a
so
noble...
he testified in the RCO as one of the concerns about accessibility. And I think as Ms. Peebles has testified on other issues, my recommendations were just based on the Alpha Center coming to the RCO. But secondarily, as has been testified earlier by members of council and by people in the community, this center is a representative of other issues that have occurred. And so our concern for the RCO was on this particular issue, the Alpha Center. I'm testifying only on the Alpha Center.
No, I understand. I got that clear, but you raised a point that maybe should be addressed at some point. And maybe if you and I can chat afterwards, I'd like to know a little more about the situation, who the young man is. And you did also say you had an agreement dating back about that soccer field, and I'd like to see that as well. But we can do that later, privately. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to be brief, a little bit under the weather today. But I really just wanted to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, especially Councilman Curtis Jones, as we deal with town and gown issues. As someone who went to Temple University, I'm a graduate of Temple University, like so many other Philadelphians are, I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed that we haven't seen the level of support for the community. And the one thing that I always tell folks is that you don't have to have things in your neighborhood that you don't want.
That's right.
Whether you're in Chestnut Hill or in North Philly. If you don't want it in your neighborhood, you don't have to have it. And so I just want to really encourage you and know that you have support for your efforts, because what we want to see here is a partnership. It can't be this imbalance of power. And so we, say to Temple that we want to see everyone working together. We want to see relationships that make sense, both for Temple and for the community. And so we look forward to doing whatever we can on council to facilitate that actually happening. So thank you so much for being here today and for speaking out on behalf of the community.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, thank you all. Thank you for your time. Ms. Marconi, why don't you, I think we have 5 other people who wanted to speak. Why don't you, we call them up just in the interest of trying to move this forward, and they can all come.
Gail Loney, Reverend Gregory Holston, Ruth Burchett, Reverend William Moore, and Jackie Williams.
Okay, other than those 5, is there anyone else here who wants to testify? Okay, one other, I see you, one other person. All right, the names that were called, why don't you come up, 3 people sit at the table, and the other folks sit in the black chairs there. And I would just respectfully ask everybody, just try to be as brief as possible, because we are running into another hearing pretty soon. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, sure. All right. Whoever would like to. I think I heard 5 names called and somebody else raised their hands. Is there somebody else? Yeah, go ahead, ma'am. Come on up and sit down in the black seat. So we'll move 3 and then 3, okay? Who'd like to go first? Please identify yourself and proceed. Speak right in the microphone, because.
Hi. My name is Gail Loney, and I wrote a statement to leave.
A little closer microphone, please. And if you have a written testimony, we can make that all part of the record, too.
Okay, thank you. Hello. My name is Gail Loney, and I'm a lifelong member of the community. I have been a consistent and regular voter, and recently started working the polls in my community, in addition to being a block captain for the last 10 years. As such, I feel I can speak as a leader for and in my community. My concerns regarding the Alpha Center that Temple is presenting starts at the beginning. First and foremost, though the community is being told that this plan has been in the work for 5 years, once again, we are just getting wind of this project. If it truly is a project in the best interest of the public, why wasn't the project presented to us at the beginning stages of its inception? There has been no consultations regarding need for or the design or location of this building and project. Repeatedly, we are inundated with Temple doing so much to help us because, of course, we can't help ourselves. Interestingly enough, they never come openly and freely saying, what can we help you with? What do you want? Though Temple owns the land, which they consistently let the community know when they want to do a project, they still need to be mindful that the project is adjacent to people's homes, which is a point of pride and ownership for them as well. Owning the land does not mean you can disregard the surrounding area, which is bordered to the west by the historic Gothic Berean Church and to the east by homeowners who would be adjacent to this proposed Alpha Center. Designing a complete project without any community input is an insult and a sign of disrespect. Bringing this project to the community after deciding all facets of where, when, how, why, and what for, without regard for others is wrong. It tells us that you know what's best for us, which you don't, and we can't make decisions for ourselves, which we can. Though you say that parking for this facility would be provided for by existing surrounding parking spaces, provided by Temple. As community members, we know that this is not true. We already have had to add permit parking to numerous blocks in this area because though you claim your staff, students, and guests will have ample places to park, they still choose to park in the neighborhood on the blocks where the communities live. And parking in the architectural schools lot across Diamond Street is not ample parking for such a large new complex. The current design was never discussed with either the community or the neighbors and does not duplicate, accommodate, or complement the existing design of the church or the housing complex or the surrounding area. The 7-foot wall that faces the community does not embrace or include and therefore is yet another intrusive boundary to a neighborhood of already existing boundaries. Not to mention the playground that was later divulged not to be a playground at all, but a stormwater management system. That's fine and well as a natural habitat, but for children who want swings and slides, they still need a playground and a play area, not a stormwater management system. And last but not least, we do not want Temple University expanding their footprint any further in this community. We do not want the Spins District. We do not want the Spins District expanding and Temple University amending their master plan to include any more land mass accumulation in this area in this way. We do not want this or any other rezoned to allow Temple University to further infiltrate and destroy our history and our footprint and sense of community in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Whoever would like to go next, please. Right in the microphone, identify yourself and
My name is Ruth Burchett. I am founder of Heritage Community Development Corporation, also a lifelong North Philadelphia resident. I've served as block captain over 30 years and committee person as well. I come to speak against this Alpha Center, also as a Temple alumni. I am aware that Temple University did operate a child care center at the corner of Broad and Jefferson Streets, where I studied child care myself. At the time, that school that child care center was for the faculty, not for the community at all. I heard in Dean Anderson's testimony that the faculty wants Temple to do a daycare center for them. They have experience in having done so, and if the faculty trusts Temple University's competency to do a daycare, then let them do so in land that they already have a building on. I would also state that my opposition to this, as Ms. Loney stated, is that the spin district of Temple University, which they are requesting in this ordinance, is something that we do not want expanded. Right now, the spin district ends on the north side, on the northern portion of the spin district ends at Diamond Street on the south side. This request is asking for the spin district to jump across the street and include this property as well. I know that as they testified, this parcel of land was acquired from the School District of Philadelphia, and I fully believe that should this building be built, typical Temple is that they will also seek to acquire Elvison School, and their footprint will then extend all the way to Susquehanna Avenue. Okay. I would also state that the building that they're planning has a geo-design kind of psychedelic, and it would be just an awful thing to have sitting next to the historic Berean Presbyterian Church. And the divide is simply a one-lane street, a tiny street, Park Avenue. I would also state that, Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, that you questioned about traffic and about parking and such at the Civic Design Review Committee hearing. And I will note that I've attended the RCO meeting. I attended the meeting that Temple University held at Berean Presbyterian Church, and I also attended the Civic Design Review Committee meeting. Diamond Street is a urban arterial route. It is a major traffic route here in the city of Philadelphia, and in Temple's plan, they propose creating intersections with pedestrian walkways, two additional pedestrian walkways in the 1300 block of Diamond Street, equipped also with stop signs for their students, I suppose, to cross from one side of the street to the other. And they have included in that design speed bumps as well. All of these things are things that will will add to the traffic congestion in the community. They also have, we're also looking at the fact that they would be parking restrictions on 13th Street as well as Diamond Street. And so that is problematic. I think for most part, the main thing that I come as a child care professional to, and a mental health professional as well, to oppose is Temple's coming forward to be a service provider of early childhood education in our community. Temple has, as the educational management organization, applied to the School District of Philadelphia to become the overseer of educational services to multiple elementary schools in our community. After 5 years, and these were failing schools, and this was a part of the school turnaround process. After 5 years, Temple got a failing grade. Temple lacks the competency to provide this service for our community, and you don't get another chance at our babies.
Ma'am, if I could ask you to wrap up, please, because we still got a number of people who want to testify.
Okay. I do want to state also that, you know, we heard about, you know, the community not utilizing, heard Dean Anderson talk about the community not utilizing some of the beneficial services that Temple University has. And to that I say, the community is not utilizing Temple University services is directly linked to the community's distrust and rejection of Temple University. I state further that we're tired of people utilizing the miserable statistics that we live under every single day to acquire funding and grants to spoon feed remedies to us. It is offensive. We're tired of it. And in this daycare center, I asked at the meeting at Berean Presbyterian Church, I asked Dean Anderson, were they planning this as a third, with the inclusion of the psychological services, were they planning a therapeutic milieu? He said yes. And so our kids are not test rats. We're tired of this. It is extremely offensive, and it is not Afrocentric at all. The parents have the ability to go and acquire the kinds of supports that their children need, and we don't need an institution to do this for it. I will say also that my father, unfortunately, had to fight Temple University in the 1950s. Temple and the city were planning to tear down the houses west of Broad Street for a Temple expansion. I came home from Carver School directly across from their proposed stadium site, and the elders were encircled on my sidewalk with brooms in hand because they were always sweeping. I have such a civic call on my life because of the actions of these people, and have had offered and made tremendous contributions to the Philadelphia community because of it. And so Temple University instead, because of the unification of the homeowners west of Broad Street last century, they were pushed east of Broad Street and demolished homes like the ones in Fairmont and Spring Garden section. And so here we are again today. Now, I am a senior, and here we are in this century still fighting Temple University. It's not fair. It is my expectation and my great appreciation if this body of elected officials and all other elected officials would call Temple University into check. They are a state-related institution that enjoys, in fact, this budget year, it's $150 million that they went before Senate Appropriations to beg for. Only to have President, and I was sitting there, to have President Englert the very next week stand in Mitten Hall at Temple University and say, with a presentation, that they're going to float a bond for $130 million to build a stadium. I think Temple has its mission twisted. They are no longer the social justice mission college that Russell Conwell envisioned decades ago.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Sir, please, identify yourself and proceed.
Thank you so much, Chairman Greenlee and members of council who sit on this Rules Committee panel. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opposition to the Alpha Center by Temple University. My name is Reverend William B. Moore. I'm the senior pastor of the 10th Memorial Baptist Church, where I've served for the past 44 years. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. I've seen it all. Before I enter my testimony, however, I want to express my displeasure at the paid outsiders who work for Temple University's Board of Trustees, who characterizes anyone who disagrees with Temple's point of view in a strident way as raucous protesters. To the contrary, the outbreak of the March 6th meeting was the result of a community's voice that has been disrespected and ignored over the years. I do not consider residents, pastors, senior citizens, leaders of great organizations, and taxpayers as raucous outsiders and trying to paint those who disagree with Temple's encroaching in our neighborhood as a few raucous protesters. To the contrary, that is not true. I want to express my opposition to the Alpha Center as it has been presented. First of all, it has not been discussed adequately with the community. We certainly have the capabilities to make decisions for our own community without any outside interference. I speak not only for myself, but for the more than 15 pastors who lead and continue to lead great organizations, many of them, some of them who are here today. I was taken aback by a comment that was made following a meeting comprised of pastors, residents, students from the Stadium Stompers, and residents of the community. At the end of that meeting, and I have been a part of meetings over the last 2.5 years with Temple University, and I have to honestly say that it has been a meeting where there's been two-way conversation, but one-way listening. Temple will not listen to the neighborhood on anything. The president said at the end of that meeting, we will tell you what the university wants to do for the community. Well, when the president says in a recent comment, the time is right to take the next step, truer words could not be spoken. But that step needs to be a backward step, to sit down with the community. The stand that I take with respect to this, to the Alpha Center, that lingers in the mind of many residents who have not been consulted. First of all, is it needed? How much will the center compete with the existing services that are already existing in the community? And there are congregations and other nonprofits who can do it without Temper's help. And our residents willing to allow their children to be used as test cases for research. I dare not. Much of what has been put forward benefits Temple and not the residents. The Alpha Center and other projects to come are designated to show how great a community developer Temple University is. Far be it from that. Temple is not the great developer, but the great divider. Too much of North Philadelphia is development gone wild. This is a good time to sit and develop a comprehensive plan for the residents of North Central Philadelphia. I want to end with these observations, and thank you for the time. First of all, we are tired of Temple encroaching on our community. Their footprint is on the necks of our community. We are tired of development that's been joined together at the hip with Temple University. I lived at 1848 West Master Street for more than 30 years. I raised my children there. And now the parsonage is being taxed at a very high rate, but there is a developer who is building, as I sit here today, student housing, who gets a 10-year tax abatement, and my church gets the tax bill. I want to share with you a story that's fresh from Friday about the track. There was a very distinguished member of our community who heard that the soccer field was not available to the community. And so he drove up one Saturday morning in his jogging uniform and asked two of his children to go across the street to see if they could get on the track. His children looked at him and said, "Dad, they're not going to let me do it. They're going to get in my face." To which he responded, "Don't worry, Dad will take care of you." They went back again, they turned him away, and the only way that he was able to get in there, he was fortunate enough to have the number for the vice president. He called him, he got out of his bed, and got permission for them to go on the track. He did it again with the same result. So that many of the facilities that they claim to be open to the community are not open to the community. Temple, we are just sick and tired of Temple encroaching on our community. We want to be left alone and chart our own course and our own destiny.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you. No questions? Okay. Our second panel, thank you all for coming. Our second panel, please. I think there was another lady that stepped away for a minute, but she can come back. Yeah. All right, she's coming back. Other than these three, is there anyone else here who wants to testify? Okay, good. This will be our last one because we're butting up against another hearing here.
Hello.
All right, please, identify yourself and proceed.
Hello, my name is Catherine Blunt. I live in West
A
Philly
little
now.
closer to the mic because, like I said, this is a hearing room and you can't hear
I'm
it.
a little person, so.
That's okay. Just move the mic closer, that's all.
Okay, is that it? All right. Hello, my name is Catherine Blunt. I live in West Philly now, but I was raised in Johnson Homes, and then my mom moved to Jefferson Manor at 10th and Oxford, where our house still is. She was a member of Bright Hope Church for 50 years, and so I can add my voice to what Ms. Peebles said. I mean, I knew about Wanamaker Junior High School and what happened there, and I only read about in the paper, I forget which neighborhood paper it was, that said that the church had sold its interest in that property to Temple. Now, my sister, the church had a fund. It was the building fund. Right. And my sister used to give to that fund thinking that she was paying for a daycare center and a school that the church would build on that property. So I had to tell her, listen, Jean, there's no such animal as this, and showed her the paper. Maybe it was the Sun that printed it. And so that's how we in the community, and even probably the church members, found out that the church no longer had access or owned that property. The other piece I want to share is that I stayed with my mother for a bit when she was ill, and I would go to the track area at about, I think it was maybe, 16th and Berks, and I and neighbors would walk that track, and we were allowed to do that. And at some point, that track became inaccessible. And so the other day, I was riding past my mother's house, which is still there, and is still owned by our family, I noticed the new track. And I saw a bunch of students from Temple and people from Temple even playing on the field that Temple does not own, because that labor union still owns that first part of that property, so Temple students were there. I didn't see any neighborhood people, nor did I get the feeling that neighborhood people were welcome. What has happened is that over the years, Temple has become less and less friendly and more or less opposing to the community, with its students parking on our blocks, making it very difficult for us to have visitors coming and going, and making it very difficult for us to park. And when we try to say something, sometimes the retorts we get from them very, very arrogant and unfriendly. So what has happened, because of Temple's attitude toward the community has changed, so has the Temple students' attitude toward the community has changed. I am still a member of that community because I have family that lives in that community at 10th and Oxford, and so I need to say that we need council to support the efforts of the North Philadelphia community to be respected and allowed to live in their own community and determine their own destiny in their community. Further, as a member of the Pre-K Commission, I know that there are children from 2 to 4 or 3 to 4 who need to have access to quality daycare. What we should be doing, hopefully, is allowing for that community to develop quality daycare right there in that community in order to create jobs in that community and bring money into that community. The other piece is Dunbar School is right there at 12th and Montgomery. That school may be underpopulated. One of the problems that we have is that we need to provide for programs for underpopulated schools, and there's no reason why we couldn't have a daycare center in Dunbar School, if there is one that's needed. And there is also the Church of the Advocate. They may have a daycare center as well. So there are many opportunities to create daycare. People will go for daycare that is comfortable, culturally reflective of themselves, cost effective, and certainly close. And I don't know if the community sees Temple as a place they would want to send their children.
All right, thank you. Whoever would like to go next?
She's the next one.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Good morning. My
Morning.
name is Mrs. Jacqueline Williams. I was born and raised in North Philadelphia. I'm a member of Power. I went to school at Meade School at 18th and Oxford. I went to Vaults at 24th and Master. I went to beauty school at 18th and Cecil B. Moore, Ruth Carter Beauty School. So I've been in the neighborhood all my life. I've been fighting Temple since 1970. They caused the neighborhood to decay and go down. Reverend Moore has been a champion and a gladiator that we can go to. I've been coming here since 2004 for my block, because when they start revitalizing the neighborhood, they were tearing down buildings, adding on to single-family dwellings, making them 20-room housing with no zoning. When Reverend Moore came down and told them about the blight in the neighborhood, all these different trailers with this trash and rubbish, I was taking care of my mother at the time. She had Alzheimer's. I couldn't even open the windows. They never put a zoning notice until we came down with 10th Memorial, and then they start putting zoning notice in the area. I'm also the block captain. I have a rapport with Temple's I forget her name now, but she's the person in charge of sanitation there. They put out sofas, chairs, mattresses. They do not comply with putting mattresses in plastic bags. The furniture is all over. When I walk down from the Church of the Advocate, you can't even walk on the pavement because they've taken over. A second thing is I've been involved with Cecil B. Moore revitalization since the 90s when they were supposed to have the Billie Holiday Center put at 16th Street. They were supposed to have WHAT at Willington Street. Temple did take over at the other side at 15th Street. I'm active in my community. I love North Philadelphia. I love Philadelphia, period. The second thing is I've been a homeowner since I was 19. My parents were homeowners. My mother had a beauty shop there. She was a homeowner. We had judges, lawyers, school teachers, doctors, everything. It was a well-rounded neighborhood. People, Cecil Moore lived there. He was my neighbor. When I came from Vaux, we were staying outside of College Avenue until we got that barrier straightened out. The second thing is we have a daycare center too at 19th and Cecil B. Moore Avenue. She's affiliated faith-based daycare center operator. And there's two, one on each side of the street. They closed down Women's Christian Alliance at 18th and Cecil B. Moore, which is down the street from me, because they're trying to put a charter school there because they wanted to move it on 19th Street in the 1700. The homeowners protested it, so they shut down Women's Christian Alliance. Women's Christian Alliance was a mainstay in North Philadelphia. It was a woman, a Negro, who started it from Broad Street. I used to go to modeling school there with Vera Gunn myself as a teenager. And they shut down Women's Christian Alliance to try to save themselves. They rented out space to other entities, and they still closed them down. I'm scared they're going to close Meade School down. That's where I went. They say they don't have enough children going there. And the other thing is Temple students, I was young myself. Everybody likes to enjoy themselves. They go to school, they have their curriculum. They got more whiskey bottles than the state store got in their windows, and they're not ashamed to put it out there. When they go and raid their houses, it's 100 to 200 people in the house. The cops say, I didn't think I was going to ever stop getting people to come out of here. That's on Revere Street, the 1600, the 1700, 18th Street. They took Joe Frazier had the house down the street from me, which is a single-family dwelling. They took that and made it a 20-room rental. The trash is out there. I've been in More Beautiful since 2000. We can't get it. All they got is trash out there, the beer bottles, the trash cans. It's a store on the corner that's an eyesore, but Temple is taking over. They tried to make us pay for the lights in the alley. They tried to run us out with blight, so some homeowners just got up and left. They tried to make them pay for the demolition of their homes. So when is Temple going to be friendly to us? They haven't been. I own my property, my parents own their property. That's where I got the initiative to stand up to be a homeowner. I've worked all my life. I give back to my community. I'm out there cleaning. I clean both sides of the street, whether it's the school or just the side where the houses are. I even clean around the corner, the city. I commend the men when they come up. I had Clip just came. It took them 6 months to come to clean down the 2 lots in our area. All I'm asking for is to be treated fairly as a taxpayer and a citizen and a homeowner in my own area. I should be able to have something to say about what comes in my neighborhood, when it comes in there, what it's going to do to my neighborhood, and what are they going to do for our neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Reverend Holston, please identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Reverend Gregory Holston. I'm the Executive Director of POWER. POWER is Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. 65-plus congregations representing about 40,000 people in the city of Philadelphia and surrounding counties, and now in Harrisburg, York, and Lancaster counties, building communities of opportunity that work for all. I also am the senior pastor of James Memorial United Methodist Church here in the city of Philadelphia. And probably more so for our conversation about North Philadelphia, I pastored at New Vision United Methodist Church for 6 years, right on Temple's Health campus at Broad and Westmoreland Streets. There are many, many, many stories about Temple's betrayal of commitments made to the community of North Philadelphia. So we literally could fill this room and even a greater room of all of the betrayals that have happened over the years. When I became the pastor of now what is now New Vision, my lay leader, who was Marilyn Rivers, for those who in North Philly here, told us of the story of the Women's Christian Alliance, told us a story about how a commitment was made by Temple for them to use a space in one of the buildings, and after the zoning was done and the building was built, and 2 years later, they were met with a locked door saying that you can no longer use the facility. The building at Broad and Westmoreland Streets, in fact, one time, we went to a meeting, or members of that congregation went to a meeting that Temple was sponsoring, and they were talking about the health facilities and the advancements they would make, and they had a map of the area, and the map did not include the church. Church members sitting there stunned with the recognition that Temple looks at their church as just another entity to take over. This is the pain of now, I hear 50, 60 years that Temple has done to North Philadelphia, and nobody has stood up to them. Nobody has stood up. We've allowed the expansion to continue, even though they are a nonprofit and therefore by definition have a particular mission for the community. The reason they have that special status is because they're supposed to make a commitment to the community. The reason we do not call for them to pay the same level of resources back to the city is because they have the status because of the commitment they're supposed to make to provide for the community. That Temple University, in fact, founded by the Gordon Cromwell many years ago, as we stood at the Baptist Temple Center just a couple of weeks ago to lift up on Good Friday. The purpose of the university was a Christian purpose: to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to minister them that are sick, to visit them that are in prison, to educate, to teach, to build knowledge and wisdom. With all our getting, get wisdom and knowledge. That was supposed to be the mission of Temple. That's why they built the hospital. That's why they built the classrooms, to provide for the people of North Philadelphia a greater way of improving their lives. And for the last 50 years, they have fallen away from the very mission that they were called to do. I remember John Chaney used to say, when he would grab a basketball player from North Philadelphia and say, well, this one doesn't have all the education requirements of other schools, but because Temple had a special mission for North Philadelphia, we took him in and we gave him an opportunity for education. So many people in this city have had that opportunity because Temple lived up to that part of their mission, and now they have walked away from the very mission they were called to do. And who's going to challenge them? Who's going to say no? Who's going to say no? We need city council to speak with one voice and say no to this stadium, not just to say no.
Reverend Holston.
Not to just say no to the stadium. I'm almost done. Not to
Excuse
just
me.
say no to the stadium. Not to just say no to the stadium. Not to just say no to the Alpha Center. Not to just say no to that. But to say, go back to live to the mission that you were originally called to do. Become a real partner with North Philadelphians to build a better community for everyone. come and work with North Philadelphians right here who are committed to that purpose. And then let's build together a university that we all can be proud of, not the university that we see right now that we cannot be proud of as Philadelphians. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your time. All right, that completes our public hearing, and we will go into a public meeting momentarily. Thank you.
Just for the record, nobody was here for them.
All right, please. All right, we are now in the public meeting of the Committee on Rules, and I recognize Councilman Squilla. Please, please. We're almost finished, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 180100 be continued and moved to Tuesday, June 12th, 10 a.m.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that the public meeting for bill number 180100 be continued till Tuesday, June 12th at 10 a.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Again, the public meeting for bill number 180100 will be continued to June 12th at 10 a.m. Chair recognizes Councilman Squill for amendments to other bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the amendment to bill number 180003, amendment to bill number 180169, and amendment to bill number 180172. Be approved.
It's been moved and seconded on the amendments. All in favor? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the amendments as read by Councilman Squilla are approved. Again, Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the bill number 180003 as amended, bill number 180099, bill number 180169 as amended, bill number 180172 as amended, bill number 180173, and bill number 171131 be approved with the suspension reported out of committee with the suspension of rules to be read at the next council session.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The bills as read by Councilman Squilla with the appropriate amendments are reported as committee favorably with a rule suspension. That completes the public meeting of the Rules Committee today. Thank you all very much.